Shalom and welcome. This is Tushiyah Life Ministries, taking the light of the word to the world with sound wisdom for a successful walk. This 10-part training series for new, maturing, and seasoned believers in Messiah Yeshua is called Building My Faith. We also invite truth seekers who'd like to understand what it means to follow Yahweh through his son, Yeshua. This is session 1. You can trust the Bible. The unfolding of your word gives light, according to Psalm 119, 130. When we read the Bible, we're reading about the word, the will, and the way of Yahweh, the Lord. Several centuries after Yahweh told Moses to record his words, Ezra, a Hebrew priest and scribe, set his heart to learn the Torah and to live by it and lead others in obeying it in Israel. Ezra saw Yahweh's Torah for what it is, instructions for living an effective and fruitful life. In this session, we're going to look at the substance and the structure of the scriptures. Make sure you have something to write with and make sure you've got something to write on. I want you to know you can have great confidence in the authenticity, the accuracy, and the authority of the Bible. And it's because when Yahweh wanted to communicate something to his people, he instructed Moses to record what he spoke. In Exodus 34, verse 27, we read, "Write down all these instructions, for they represent the terms of the covenant I'm making with you and Israel." Scripture is not based on fables, fantasies, or fiction. When the Bible speaks about people, places, or events, it's accurate because Yahweh set men apart to accurately record his word. This is important because we need to know that. Yeshua had such great confidence in the instructions Moses and the prophets recorded, he used them without reservation whenever he taught. In Matthew 5, verses 17 through 19, it's recorded, he says, "Don't misunderstand why I've come. I didn't come to abolish and do away with the Torah of Moses or the writings of the prophets. No, I came to accomplish and fulfill their purpose. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not even the smallest detail of God's Torah will disappear until its purpose is achieved." So if you ignore the least commandment and teach others to do the same, you'll be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But anyone who obeys God's Torah, his instruction, and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So that's why he taught everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on a rock. That's Matthew 7:24. The Bible has the most compelling collection of words ever recorded. They were recorded by human writers involving their temperament, frames of reference, and vocabulary without violating them. And the Spirit of Elohim guarded and preserved the integrity of each statement from error, inaccuracy, and omission in the original writings. So what do these compelling words tell us? Well, they reveal Yahweh's purpose and plan to place a model of heaven into history on earth, inhabited with a kingdom of priests. It's always important to know the source or the substance of your information. And so that's what we're going to take a look at now, the substance of the scriptures. The scriptures, and again can be also referred to as the Bible, reveal the word of Yahweh, sometimes translated the Lord, what he has spoken or revealed. 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17 reads, "Every scripture is God-breathed, inspired, and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for instruction in righteousness, that each person who belongs to God may be complete, thoroughly equipped for every good work." The word is profitable. Inspiration is not dictation, but rather validation. It's the action of declaring something officially acceptable. In Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 through 11, we read, For my thoughts are not your thoughts, and your ways are not my ways, says Yahweh. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as the rain comes down and the snow from the sky and doesn't return there, but waters the earth and makes it grow and bud, and gives seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so is my word. It goes out of my mouth and will not return to me void, but will accomplish what I please, and it will prosper in the thing I send it to do. The word of Yahweh is productive. In Deuteronomy 8:3, where Matthew 4:4 is repeated, Deuteronomy portion reads, He humbled you, allowed you to be hungry, and fed with manna, which you didn't know, neither did your fathers know, that he might teach you that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that proceeds out of Yahweh's mouth. His word really sustains our life. The word preserves. The scriptures reveal the will of Yahweh, what he wants done. Yahweh tells us exactly what he expects of humanity. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 and 5, we read, Hear, Yisrael, Yahweh is our God. Yahweh is one. You shall love Yahweh your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your might. We are to love Yahweh, number one. Second, in Deuteronomy 10, verses 12 and 13, we read, Now, Yisrael, what does Yahweh your God require of you? But to fear Yahweh your God, to walk in all his ways, to love him, and to serve Yahweh your God with all your heart and with all your soul, to keep Yahweh's commands and statutes, which I command you today for your good. We're to let Yahweh lead us. A third thing he expects, found in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, you shall not take vengeance, nor bear grudge against your neighbor or against any children of the people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. So we are to love Yahweh, we are to let Yahweh lead us, and we're to love our neighbor. A third thing the scriptures do, they're built on, they reveal the way of Yahweh, what his methods are. The way of Yahweh can also be called his instructional commands, or simply Torah. 1 Kings 11:33, the last part says, And you have not walked in obedience to me, nor done right in my eyes, nor kept my decrees and Torah. His way for humanity is to expand, extend, and exercise dominion, which enhances his kingdom. In Genesis 1:26 through 31, not reading the entire portion, but here's what we do have. God said, let's make man in our image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion. God blessed them. God said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. God saw everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. The first recorder of his way, of his instructions, was Moses. We read earlier that Moses wrote, Yahweh said to Moses to write all these words. Also in Exodus 24, verse 4, it tells us Moses wrote all Yahweh's words. Okay, so what's the structure of the scripture? Because for many of us, when we look at scripture, or what we know about scripture, especially growing up, what we've got are puzzle pieces about people, places, events, and sometimes we're not quite sure how to put all that together. Unfortunately, there are some people who figure you can put square pegs into round holes, triangles into circles, and all kinds of things just because they find the words in the Bible, but they pull them out of context. So what we're going to do is to get a structural overview of the Bible so that you'll understand the books that we use. So here's our structural overview. The word Bible literally means books or library, The Bible is really a library of 66 sacred texts. And by the way, none of them are lost and none have been removed that should be there. This collection of 66 sacred texts was recorded by about 40 authors, or writers, I'd rather say, over 15 centuries. Yes, 1,500 years. The Bible is an authentic historical document. It's an accurate document on what it speaks about, and it's an authoritative document. The Bible uses various literary, boy, I can't get that word out. The Bible uses a variety of literary forms. It uses narrative. In other words, it tells a story or gives an account of something, or it presents a biographical sketch of someone or some group. It uses various teaching methods. It informs, it instructs, it gives insights. It also enlightens, it corrects, it directs, and it familiarizes us with different things that it presents to us. And it also uses Hebrew poetry. Hebrew poetry is a non-rhyming rhythm which uses confirming, comparative, or contrasting patterns. Not quite like our roses are red, violets are blue kind of thing. Additionally, we'll find in Scripture allegory, metaphors, and other figures of speech. It's very, very important to know when something is literally literal and when it's figuratively literal. You don't want to read the entire book the same way because you might, well, if you misread, you'll misunderstand. And if you misunderstand, you can mislead. And we want to avoid that as much as possible. Here's the storyline overview. Beginning to put those puzzle pieces together the way they belong, we need to have an overview of the Bible. Did you know that there are 15 books in the Bible that give its core chronological storyline? That's right. Out of the 66 books, take 15 of them. I'll show you which 15. And you'll have a chronological overview from Genesis to Revelation of the Bible's story. The chronological storyline begins with Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, Ezra, and Nehemiah. And the chronological storyline concludes with Luke, Acts, and the Revelation. Let's take a look at the structure of section 1, the Hebrew scriptures, called by many people the Old Testament. I'll say something about that in a minute. But these next two sections are very, very important to know because you're going to run into some people who may try to trip you up regarding the Bible, and having this knowledge, this understanding, will give you a skillful response. Scripture was originally written in the Hebrew language. The Hebrew was originally written in a pictographic form using 22 images. Each image has an inherent or an internal meaning, and when you string these different images together, you build a word picture. Later, each pictograph was replaced with a symbol or character. The pictographic sound and meaning associated with the symbol has been kept. It was never changed. For example, in English, each of the 26 letters of the alphabet represent a sound. A, ah. B, buh. R, okay? But each of these letters has no internal or inherent meaning. They just represent what we've been taught they mean. The Hebrew scriptures, as we see them today, are compiled as 24 books in 3 different groups called the Tanakh. The T in Tanakh, and that's spelled Tanakh, the first 5 books are called Torah, Torah. Torah really means instruction, not law. Instruction. The next 8 books are called Nevi'im. That's where the N comes from. And Nevi'im is Hebrew for prophets. The concluding 3rd section has 11 books, and this section is called the Ketuvim. That's Ketuvim. And Ketuvim is Hebrew for writings. If you are writing this down, Nevi'im, I forgot to spell it for you in case you need that, is Neviim. So Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim is where they get the acronym Tanakh. When the Hebrew scriptures were translated into the Greek language, the order and the groupings of the book was changed. It went from 24 books to 39 books in 4 groups. In the Greek accounting of those books of the Bible, we have law for the first 5. The next 12 is called history. The next 5 is called poetry. And the last 17 are called prophets or prophetical section. And that's further broken down as 5 major prophetic books and 12 minor prophetic books. But note, between the 24 books in the Tanakh and the 39 books in what Christians call the Old Testament, same content, just a different counting and order. I'll have a chart available for you to take a look at so you can see that. Now, how did we get our English translations? It was spoken and presented and written, originally recorded in Hebrew, translated in Greek, translated in Latin and Greek, and then from there, we have English versions. How about the second section of the Bible? Well, I call it the Greek scriptures, and many Christians refer to it as the New Testament. The words of the Hebrew, Aramaic, and other speakers of scripture were recorded and transliterated or translated into Greek. That is, the books between Matthew and Revelation, they were all written after the resurrection of Messiah and after he had returned to heaven. The Greek section has 27 books in 2 divisions. The first 5 I call the evangels. Most people will probably refer to them as the gospels. Both words mean good news. That includes Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and I include Acts. Why? It's the second book that Luke wrote, and it was actually a continuation of the life of Yeshua and then his disciples who followed after him. And then after those 5 books, we have 22 letters or epistles. There are 9 general epistles, and there are 13 written by Saul, also called Paul. Some general notes. The Bible never refers to itself as an Old Testament and a New Testament. That separation is a man-made construct to make it easier to locate scripture. The Bible wasn't recorded using chapters and verses. That's another man-made construct added for convenience to help referencing and quoting scripture. St. Augustine, theologian, philosopher, and bishop of Roman North Africa around 400 AD, is the person responsible for the inclusion of the 14 books of the Apocrypha. So the King James Bible of 1611 and most of the English translations during that time actually had 80 books in them, 80. But in 1644, it was forbidden to read the Apocrypha in churches. And then in 1666, the first editions of the King James Bible began being published without the Apocrypha, which gave us the 66 books that we would have today. The number of books in the first section of the Bible is 39. The 27 Greek writings, 27 plus 39 is 66. The Apocrypha are other things. And if you got questions, put that in the comment section below and I'll be glad to respond to what those are and when they came about more specifically. I want to teach you how to read the Bible like a Hebrew without becoming Jewish. That's right. How to read so you understand the way the Bible was originally presented to its original audience so that we can gather the proper interpretation and understanding and then be able to apply it appropriately in our context where we live. Now, regarding doctrine, at times I'll make a distinction between biblical doctrine and traditional doctrine, between biblical doctrine and denominational doctrine, and between biblical doctrine and personal doctrine. The reason is biblical doctrine may affect salvation, where traditional, denominational, or personal doctrines where they deviate from the Bible do not. They may tell you they do, but they do not. One more thing you need to be aware of is Judaism. Yes, just because the Bible is written in Hebrew and because the people we know as Jews held it for the longest period of time does not mean that everything they know and believe about it is accurate or true. Many who follow Judaism are like many who follow Christianity. They're following the teachings of those who present information to them, and they don't necessarily do a lot of their own personal research. Check this out. Being Jewish can mean one of three things. It could be generational. You're a member of Judah's family line, that is Jacob's fourth son. Or you could be a geographical Jew. What's that? You're from the land of Judah and you are a Judean, shortened to or abbreviated to be Jew in the times of Rome. Or you could just be a student of Rabbinic Judaism. Typically, students of Rabbinic Judaism are found in three branches of Judaism. They're known to be Orthodox, Conservative, or Reformed. So what's that mean? Rabbinic Judaism or Rabbinism has been the main form or mainstream form of Judaism since the 6th century. Rabbinic Judaism gained predominance, I'll say, within the Jewish diaspora. That is, when they began to spread out all over the globe between the 2nd and 6th centuries. The oral law, which they believe that Yahweh gave Moses not everything to write down, but some things he just explained to him. Again, we've seen where it says Moses wrote down everything Yahweh said, but those who follow Rabbinic Judaism, that is the Judaism taught by the rabbis, they believe in an oral law. It's called a large collection of books called the Talmud, Talmud. And that's composed of something called the Mishnah, Mishnah, and the Gemara, Gamara. The oral law or Talmud was developed to control the interpretation of Jewish scripture. It also encouraged the practice of Rabbinic Judaism in the absence of temple sacrifice and other practices which were no longer possible since the Second Temple had been destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. So let's wrap it up. You can trust the Bible. The Bible is a library of 66 sacred texts recorded over 1,500 years by 40 writers. It's authentic, accurate, and authoritative, and not based or copied from fables, fantasies, or fictional accounts. All scripture is inspired by Yahweh, though recorded by humans. It was done so without error, inaccuracy, or omission in the original writings. We mentioned earlier on that the scriptures reveal the word of Yahweh, the will of Yahweh, and the way of Yahweh. We've also looked at the fact that there are 15 books of the Bible that give its core chronological storyline. The two sections that we have, the first section is written in Hebrew, the second section is written in Greek. We've also talked about Judaism because I think it's important that you understand just what that is and what that means. Many of their practices and things give us some insight as to how things may have been done biblically, but we have to realize also the rabbis taught some things to specifically keep those who practice Judaism away from practicing Christianity, just like those who began to practice Christianity taught those followers to stay away from the Hebrew scriptures. Both were incorrect in what they had people do, and we want to make sure we understand where those differences are so we can, in fact, follow the way of Yahweh more perfectly. This has been Building My Faith, Session 1. You can trust the Bible.